The kitchen was a temple of betrayal that night. The scent of vanilla beans and butter lingered, wafting through the air like a ghostly whisper of what should have been a celebration, but now hung like a noose around my neck. I stood at the marble island, an unnecessary knife in my hand, the blade gleaming under the unforgiving cold light of the chandelier above. It cast faintly flickering shadows that danced ominously against the parchment white walls. The distant laughter of guests filtered in from the dining room, punctuated by the clinking of crystal glasses and the subtle hum of conversation, unfamiliar sounds in what had once been a sanctuary. I glanced down at the knife, its handle cool against my palm, and I felt an unsettling calm wash over me. What once was a symbol of love, a simple family dinner in our luxurious home, was now veiled in deception. I had spent countless nights in this very kitchen, crafting meals with love, hours lost in the rhythm of chopping, sautéing, and whisking, pouring every ounce of devotion into each dish for a man who had now deemed our 25 years of marriage boring. He didn't even have the decency to say it to my face. Instead, he uttered those cruel words, dripping with derision, to his mistress. I inhaled sharply, the lingering fragrance of jasmine from my newest bottle of perfume mixing grotesquely with the sweetness of the cake I had so carefully decorated. The vanilla mingled with the floral notes, creating an intoxicating aroma that was now tainted with his betrayal. In that moment, the world around me faded, and I was left standing in the stark shock of reality, the knife feeling heavier with every heartbeat. With trembling fingers, I set down the knife and turned my gaze toward the banquet room. The laughter now sounded hollow, like a mocking echo from the past. Laughter that was once ours, spontaneous, joyous, transformed into shrill notes of misplaced merriment. They toasted to nothing, savoring the bubbly effervescence of champagne without a second thought. I had sacrificed so much, and for what? I stifled a cry, drawing in a shaky breath as images began to flit in and out of my mind like specters demanding recognition. Flashback. I remembered our first apartment, cramped and filled with the faint aroma of instant ramen. I had eaten those tasteless noodles while he dined on Michelin-starred delicacies, working hard to build his dreams while I languished in the shadows. I meticulously balanced our budget, applying for scholarships to pay for school when he couldn't support me, each sacrifice slowly accumulating as bricks to the castle we now inhabited. Those late nights spent sleepless, focusing on perfecting his proposals, poring over every word just to make sure nothing was amiss. These were my offerings to the altar of his ambition, and what did I receive in return? An offhanded comment, a grenade launched into my chest from the lips of a man I had honored and sacrificed for. My stomach churned at the thought of him with that woman, a vivacious creature likely draped in Chanel, and sporting a smile that seemed to gleam with innocence, a mask that would never reveal her role in my suffering. But other revelations were burgeoning within me, simmering beneath the surface. The cake was too sweet, the laughter too shrill, and I felt the world around me twist, the very walls of this opulent home beginning to close in. As if sensing my turmoil, the vibrant colors of the room paled. The reds from the drapes faded into muted swathes of beige and gray. It happened then, the moment of revelation. I crossed the threshold from the kitchen into the heart of the celebration, equipped with no purpose, no words, just truth. My worn heels clicked against the polished wood floor, and I felt a grim determination take root. The sound of the chatter around me faded, zeroing in on the sound of my breath. I caught sight of him, my husband, standing tall, his broad shoulders squared as he regaled friends with tales of business victories. Lustrous, in a tuxedo tailored to perfection, he looked every bit the successful man I had helped him become. And there, by his side, stood her, a tenacious blonde, vibrant and young, whose laughter cut through the room like a knife. With every chuckle, it gouged away at the vestiges of love I thought we had left. I only needed a moment, an instant for the full weight of their reality to sink in. Shadows morphed into clarity. I could see it all. The layers of lies and deceit peeled back to reveal the raw, unfiltered truth. I was not just a bystander in my own life, nor a footnote in his tale of success. I was a firefighter, having doused the flames of his ambition, but now the match was in my hand. With an unsteady heart, I glided through the crowd, the hum of voices intertwining like a feverish song, but my focus remained singular. Upon entering the circle, I lifted my glass, sparkling, shimmering as it caught the light. Every eye turned toward me, confusion mingling with surprise, the laughter fading to a hush. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady even as my heart raced. "I stand before you today as a testament to resilience, love, and sacrifices unthanked. For 25 years, I have been the pulse in this relationship, a caregiver, a supporter, and in the most tragic of turns, an unrecognized wife." There were gasps and murmurs, and then a giddying sense of power surged through me. Confusion flickered across my husband's face, fleeting but visceral. "What are you doing?" he mouthed, but I pressed on, unfurling the truth in delicate shards that cut deeper than any knife. "They say marriage is a partnership built on mutual respect," I enunciated deliberately, each word a dagger aimed at his heart. "But respect feels like a fleeting dream when you're told you are boring, when you've dedicated your life only to realize you've been replaced by a superficial mistress." I raised my voice as a wave of indignation rolled through me, and the room succumbed to silence, my words echoing off the high ceilings. Gaslighting was his go-to, and I saw him stiffen, ready to unravel the truth in his favor. "You're overreacting," he attempted, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle, desperate. "You're being hysterical," he added, the words hitting me with the weight of 1,000 blades. It was an attempt to dismiss me like a bothersome child, but I smiled, a smile of stark defiance, of prepared vengeance. "Let me remind you," I continued, my voice rising above the din, "that the true folly lies not in me, but in having confused kindness with weakness. You mistook my silent battles for indifference, and for that, I hold all the power." As I spoke, adrenaline coursed through my veins with each word, igniting a blazing fire of rebellion in place of my former serenity. All the years of sacrifice distilled into this singular moment, the air dense with stories unsaid, secrets buried beneath our feigned affection, the reality of my life's narrative now exposed for all to see. If only I could have captured his expression, the flickering realization of my resolve. His bravado began to unravel, and I felt a heady rush of vindication. The laughter that surrounded him felt like shards of glass, beautiful, yet dangerously sharp. "Do you know what's truly boring?" I pressed on, emboldened by the collective attention. "Being invisible, being reduced to mere wallpaper in your beautiful, gilded home. But make no mistake, this wallpaper is about to be torn down." The backlash was electric, as gasps and strained laughter rang out. The thrill of the moment crackled like static in the air, an unseen current binding us all in a collective anticipation of what I would do next. "I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here to reclaim my life." I could sense his attempts to dissuade me, the barely masked fear resonating beneath layers of pride. But the grip on my heart had transformed from anguish to a profound clarity. "You think you can cast me aside and carry on as if nothing happened? You are severely mistaken." And there it was. I had stepped into the wonderful, terrifying role of the heroine of my own story, a role filled with retribution and reckoning. The night was still young, but the journey to reclaiming my narrative had just begun. If you want to see how this wife destroys the traitor, subscribe now. The air in our once harmonious home turned stagnant, filled with the faint scent of burnt toast long forgotten on the kitchen counter. It felt suffocating, heavy with dissolved trust, lingering like the rancid oil on the bottom of an overused frying pan. I wandered through the rooms like a ghost, each inch of the house now a reminder of betrayal. The plush couch where we curled up together, the dining table now marred with silence, and the vibrant flowers in the vase that had, at one time, been symbols of love, but now quickly wilted, echoing the decay of our bond. Every step I took was underscored by the ticking of the antique clock, its measured rhythm mocking my scattered thoughts. I could feel the psychological tension stretching thin, a taut wire threatening to snap. My husband flitted around me like a distant shadow, a figure reduced to a stranger, cloaked in the borrowed confidence of his public persona, proclaiming success while I seethed in quiet despair. "Are you still sulking, darling?" he would ask with a hint of derision, the casual cruelty thick in his voice. "You're being ridiculous. Why don't you lighten up?" I often found the warmth in my cheeks morphing into a cold burn rising up my throat, trembling between indignation and doubt. Those dismissive words etched deeply into my heart, a steady drip of gaslighting until I began to question my grip on reality. Was it me? Was I indeed the one losing touch? But the truth had been etched onto the very walls of my memory, and the echoes of his deception became my guide. I resolved to gather the evidence I needed, setting the stage for the silent war simmering beneath the brittle surface. In hushed hours, cloaked behind the tranquility of the night, I became a spy in my own home, utilizing the sickly glow of my phone's screen as my only companion. The soft hum of the refrigerator turned into a comforting white noise, a lullaby as I pored over our bank statements, past conversations, and photo albums stored in the digital vault of our shared life. My fingers trembled against the keys, clattering softly against the polished table, creating a sound that felt oddly reminiscent of the flutter of a caged bird wishing to escape. I pulled up chat logs, those once innocuous exchanges now blooming with implications. Comments once dismissed as mere flirtations morphed into blatant emotional infidelities, and I felt the walls close in as I uncovered text after text, revealing the insidious nature of his double life. Sweet nothings exchanged like currency, sparkling emojis painting an idyllic picture that had no place in our reality. With rising determination, I began to meticulously screenshot the conversations, preserving moments that would soon turn into the foundation for my plans. Each digital note became my arsenal. Each revelation empowered me with the strength I thought I had lost. I was no longer a passive participant in my life. I was the architect of my fate. Then there came a moment, as daylight seeped timidly into the room, spilling gold onto the surface of our troubles, that I decided to confide in my friend Clara, a woman who had watched me navigate the choppy waters of my marriage for years. Her laughter was like sunlight breaking through the clouds, a reminder of brighter days that danced on the edges of despair. When she arrived, the fragrance of her lavender perfume filled the air, mixing with the stale scent of my shattered dreams. "You don't have to shoulder this burden alone," she whispered gently, concern creeping into her voice, as she settled into my kitchen surrounded by the remnants of my chaotic reality. The light bounced off the marble, creating an ethereal glow, yet I felt trapped within the prison of my thoughts. I pulled out the documents, the bank statements revealing the slow drain of money for lavish dates and expensive gifts, all funded by the very bank account I had helped to fill every month. "He's playing us both, Clara," I confessed, feeling the weight of my heart as it thudded with certainty. "I need your help to expose him, to take him down. He needs to see the depth of his deception, and I need to regain control of my life." Her eyes widened as she skimmed the evidence, disbelief quickly giving way to a fiery resolve. "I'll help you, but we have to be smart. This isn't going to be easy, and you need to be careful. You have to maneuver in the shadows. He will try to gaslight you again." Her words were sharp, slicing through the disbelief clouding my mind, and for the first time, I felt the power of camaraderie charging the air around us. And so it began. Each day turned into a careful dance. I wore my mask of normalcy, engaging in casual conversations while my mind thrummed with plans hidden in plain sight. The coffee I brewed in the mornings held more meaning now as I stirred in little conspiracies. Who would believe the simple truth dwelling beneath this facade of domestic bliss? I shadowed him online and offline, wearing my spyglass, meticulously gathering intel. I observed casual remarks, his whispers behind closed doors now amplified through the ears of a wife made vigilant by betrayal. I collected photos of him leaving for business meetings, an arbitrary phrase that would soon expose the fragile web spun around his double life. Weeks unfurled like old parchment, and I documented everything, my life's volume now filling up with accounts of missed calls, bank transfers to unfamiliar names, and receipts tucked away like relics of deceit. Each new piece of evidence drawing me closer to liberation and revenge. That name, the mistress whose charms had bewitched my husband, became a fixation, an obsession filling gaps of pain with the fury hurtling toward realization. The evenings were often spent poring over every detail with Clara, my confidant turned strategist, mapping out a plan that would leave no stone unturned. We dug deeper, fueled by righteous indignation, seeping into the very marrow of my bones. The kitchen transformed from a solemn place of betrayal into a war room suffused with determination, scented with the intertwining aromas of coffee and our silent fury. "Look at this," I said one afternoon, the feel of my fingertips gliding over the glossy printouts of receipts I had found. "This is the third time he's taken her to Café Delights, my favorite spot. It's like he's mocking me. But why do you let him believe you're losing your grip? Clara responded, her brows stitching together in fierce disapproval. You have the power here, and it's time you remind him of that. Those words reverberated through me, igniting embers of clarity hidden beneath layers of anger. I was not the weak woman he assumed I would become. I was transforming into what he had compelled me to be, the keeper of my own fate. Each moment he dismissed me, pushed me further away from the vain longing for redemption I had clung to in a desperate hope for reconciliation. Now it was clarity, unraveling from the cocoon of betrayal, a metamorphosis spiraling into a vengeful resolve. The tension surrounding our home escalated, an electric current I could practically taste, as the pieces of my clandestine plan began to weave into a palpable tapestry. I was preparing for my moment, guarded by the sense of betrayal and resolve, ready to unveil the truth. Power was coursing through me, igniting a determination that morphed into fiery resolve. What he had cast aside, I would reclaim in resplendent vengeance. With Clara by my side, the reckoning awaited just around the corner, cloaked in the tranquility of unsuspecting life, ready to explode like a firework bursting through the stillness of night. Soon he would learn that the woman he deemed boring had become a tempest fueled by revenge. The day of the event dawned, cloaked in deceptive tranquility. The sun bathed everything in a warm glow, illuminating the elegant marquee draped across the backyard, an ostentatious display that held the promise of celebration. I had organized a grand birthday party for my husband, a grand soiree that would make him feel like the king he believed himself to be. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the gold-embroidered invitations to the opulent finger foods that exuded wealth beneath silver cloches. The air bristled with anticipation, laden with the vibrant scent of blooming magnolias, sweet and intoxicating, blending seamlessly with the nostalgia of warm-baked pastries filling every corner of the tent. Guests filled the space, laughter mingling with the upbeat sound of live jazz that cropped up conspicuously in the corner. The clinking of glasses reverberated like distant church bells, their melodious sound cascading into the garden, interspersed with enthusiastic chatter that spun together an illusion of harmony. I stood at the center of it all, poised and composed, faking that perfect smile while the insatiable storm of excitement roiled within me, ready to erupt. The table adorned with ornate flower arrangements fluttered in the gentle breeze, each petal glistening under strings of fairy lights and lanterns hanging overhead. Everything whispered luxury, embellished gowns, satin ties, and the air of entitlement wafting through the crowd. I had spun a web of elegance, all so he could feel adored, while luring him deeper into the trap I had set. "Darling, you're simply radiant today," he said, his eyes gleaming mischievously as he leaned in to kiss my cheek. The cologne he wore was a heady scent, a mix of cedarwood and musk that had once enchanted me, but now grated against the fabric of my patience. His laughter tumbled over me like a wave, not seeing the storm brewing beneath the calm surface of my facade. "Thank you, dear. You deserve all the love today." The words dripped from my tongue, saturated with irony, sliding effortlessly from my mouth as I surveyed the growing crowd. He hadn't the slightest inkling that this would not be a typical birthday bash. This was an execution to be celebrated under the guise of love. The shadow of vengeance crept closer with every laugh and smile exchanged, tightening my chest with anticipation. As I mingled with the guests, I caught sight of Clara, her eyes glinting with approval as she joined me to go over the final details. "Everything is in place, just as you planned," she assured me, her soothing presence a reminder of the alliance we formed in our quest for retribution. When the time came to cut the cake, a spectacular confection sprinkled with gold leaf and adorned with fresh berries, I felt the energy shift in the air, an electric crackle sparking as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Guests gathered around, glasses raised in exuberant cheers, and I knew I was just moments away from unveiling my masterpiece. "You know, dear friends," I began, with an air of false humility, my heart pounding against the cage of my ribs. "Tonight, we're not just celebrating another year for my husband, but a love story that has seen its fair share of adventures." I paused, allowing the tension to swell in the room, a collective intake of breath, the anticipation palpable. But a love story is only as strong as the honesty that binds it. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I noted the glint of confusion in the eyes surrounding me. They were unaware of the storm raging just beneath the surface, a tempest swelling and surging to life. I felt an overwhelming power with each passing second as I grasped the microphone, letting it guide me in this pivotal moment. This year, I thought it was time to share the truth of a journey that began 25 years ago, a journey where one partner flourished, while the other stood in their shadow, unseen and unappreciated. My voice rang out clear and steady, the crescendo rising as I locked eyes with my husband, watching the color drain from his face as the tension transformed into a visceral dread. Caught in the web of curiosity, the room fell silent. Uncomfortable murmurs replaced the exuberant chatter, and the strings of jazz fell quiet. I could practically taste the metal tang in the air, the vibrations of disbelief and confusion sending shivers down my spine. The moment was electric, every heartbeat resonating with anticipation. With a determined breath, I continued, unraveling the layers of deception that had festooned our marriage. For too long, I have been labeled as boring, a partner who devoted her life to nurturing ambitions while being cast aside for more glamorous pursuits. Each word sank deeper into the collective consciousness enveloping the space. The faces around me shifted from intrigue to horror as I unveiled the carefully curated evidence I had amassed over weeks. The irrefutable receipts, text messages, and photos that had once been mere whispers, but now roared to life, echoing throughout our decorative prison. At that moment, Clara stepped forward, holding an extravagant satchel that was now jubilantly unzipped, the visual climax of the setup spilling out like a trove of buried truth. As I revealed each damning piece of evidence, photos of clandestine meetups, messages oozing with secret romance, I felt an intoxication wash over me, compounded by the heady fragrance of victory intoxicating the air. Gasps morphed into horrified whispers that fluttered through the crowded tent, twisting into an undercurrent of incredulous disbelief. He spent thousands on dinners with someone who he thought was more exciting than our love, while I labored in silence, keeping our dreams afloat. The tremor in my voice transformed into a command, rallying the crowd as I tossed the glowing evidence into the air. The collected breaths around me soared, the tension coiling like a serpent, a collective indignation erupting into murmurs of disbelief as I continued unspooling the threads of betrayal. But here's the real kicker, I added, allowing myself a moment of breathless triumph, relishing the expressions of shock adorning the crowd as they darted between my husband and me, writhing in uneasy fascination. He actually believed he could hide this from me, the woman who stood by his side through every trial, who helped build this empire. My husband's face twisted in mortification, his bravado crumbling like ashes before the fire whose path he had paved with lies. The vibrant colors of the celebrations around us dulled, fading into a muted palette of judgment and realization. The laughter that echoed throughout the evening morphed into an uncomfortable silence, the opulent decor becoming a stage for his humiliation, simultaneously clinging to the image of being a faithful husband while dipping into a pool of deceit. I concluded, letting the finality of my words hang ominously in the air, is a task only a coward can uphold. The ramifications of my unveiling reverberated across the room, a palpable tension settling over the onlookers forcefully, their expressions torn between disbelief and horror. I would not let him barter my silence. No longer would I be the wallpaper of our relationship, resigned to invisibility after 25 years of devotion. The taste of revenge was bittersweet, the power surging within me a resounding anthem of reclamation finding its voice at last. In the primal silence that followed, I could almost feel the pulse of my husband's regret vibrating through the crowd, but it would not suffice to create empathy from a heart that had been hardened by deceit. The glamorous world he inhabited just moments ago turned flimsy, ephemeral. I had crushed the glamour and exposed the truth beneath it all. He attempted to muster responses, but all that emerged were incoherent stutters as the dam of his carefully curated world crumbled to ash around him. It was glorious to watch as the facade shattered, revealing the raw, ugly truth of a man caught in the grip of his own making. With Clara's presence beside me, I knew I had tipped the scales, having orchestrated a performance that transcended humiliation into retribution. Victory tasted tangy on my tongue as I relished the power reflecting off the horrified faces witnessing the downfall of an ambitious man turning into a crumbling husk, stripped of illusion, exposed for who he truly was. "Would you have waited this long?" I queried the crowd, locking eyes with my husband as I savored the briefest moment of triumph over the ashes of my former life. The audience stood there captivated, fear and shock swirling in their gaze as they processed the data unfolding in front of them, remnants of a shattered marriage laid bare. The months that followed were a blur of transformations and ramifications, a world spinning on its axis, the dust settling in unpredictable patterns. As the vibrant colors of that electrifying evening faded into muted memories, reality shifted dramatically, echoing in the corridors of my life like the haunting refrain of a song long forgotten. 6 months passed since I had publicly unveiled my husband's treachery. The initial fallout had ricocheted through our circle, rippling outward until the very fabric of our lives distorted and finally unraveled. I found myself at the epicenter of a narrative that morphed from tragedy to triumph, a drastic metamorphosis catalyzed by my fierce reclamation of self. Yet, as I basked in the glow of my own resurgence, the bitter aftermath did not elude my grasp. The sight of my ex-husband looming over those downtrodden days, his sharp edges dulled to an almost unrecognizable softness, flickered through my mind. I had expected rage, perhaps a venomous denial or two, but instead, he became a ghost of the man I once knew. When we crossed paths at the court hearings, the quiet storms echoing through the hallways of that sterile building, he appeared diminished, a specter clad in ill-fitting suits that hung off him like a second-rate costume. No longer did he exude that brazen bravado, but rather a visible deflation, as if the air had been hollowed from within him. The driving force behind his success, the persona I had helped craft, crumpled into a fragile facade. At the hearings, the scent of desperation reeked around him, mingling grotesquely with the bleached antiseptic smell of the hallway. He'd been summoned not as a businessman, but as an unremarkable defendant, seated across from me with an air of defeat that settled between us, a reminder of the public humiliations and his grand miscalculations. Every hushed whisper from the attorneys echoed a symphony of his decline, transforming where I once felt resentment into a twisted sort of pity. Did you think it would all just disappear? I found myself thinking, contempt mingling with nostalgia like an old friend I had long since disowned. The once boisterous man who deemed our marriage unworthy of respect had been forcibly reduced to lamentation, a tone soft and tethered, barely escaping his lips when a fire ignited momentarily in his dwindling spirit. As layers of betrayal continued to peel, I discovered a rhythm in my own rise, building sturdy scaffolding from the ashes of the once glimmering partnership. Freedom had ignited a warmth within me, a kindred fire emboldened by strength that no longer knew submission. Each day infused, breathed life into opportunities I had once believed far outside my reach. With a keen eye and tenacity sharpened by relentless determination, I rebranded my passion for culinary arts into a burgeoning business, the Rebirth Kitchen. The scent of slow-roasted tomatoes mingled with fresh basil and cracked black pepper became my signature, filling the air of my newly opened cafe, a cozy haven tucked into a vibrant corner of the city bustling with laughter and joy. Fluffy croissants, dappled with golden crumbs and suffused with rich almond paste, lined the glass counter alongside tarts bursting with fruit, nectarines, blueberries, and kiwis, creating a kaleidoscope of color that danced beneath the gentle glow of Edison bulbs hanging overhead. The blend of the intoxicating aroma from the oven and sizzling pans created a euphoric symphony, welcoming patrons as they wandered in, delighted to inhale the essence of warmth. Once cast aside like a fixture of domesticity, I now relished my newfound identity, basking in the admiration of fulfilling dreams I had long shelved. On the flanks of the cafe, laughter spilled from sun-soaked tables filled with friends and families, revitalizing my spirit in a way I had not anticipated. The rush of espresso machines, sizzling eggs, and cheerful chatter surrounded me like the embrace of a well-worn blanket, a potent reminder of how far I had come, far from being invisible. Meanwhile, my ex-husband seemed eternally stuck in the past, horizons unreachable. News trickled in, whispers shared over coffee cups by mutual acquaintances shrouded in the veneer of caution. He had burned through his savings like a moth to a flame, clinging to the memory of my brilliance as if it were a lifeline thrown into tempestuous waters. His mistress, the sparkly specter who had once consumed his attention, fled under cover of darkness once financial realities crept in, and his lavish lifestyle dwindled to bare essentials. Dirty laundry, however, was soaked in the echoes of our past, and I pitied her plight only marginally. The rumors spoke of her hollow laughter, now quieted amidst mounting debts and diminished glamour. With the thrills of affluence dissipating, she evaporated like mist under the fervent sun, fully aware of the frailty of the facade he once nurtured zealously. Their escapade had withered, revealing a crumbling empire built on betrayal and fragile promises. Reflecting on our life, I held steadfast to lessons learned. Even though bitter, the taste was no longer acrid but a testament to growth. I tossed aside notions of harboring resentment, recognizing their fleeting grip upon me. Good riddance, I smirked softly to myself, patching the last details on the cafe menu as the scent of fresh bread wafted through the open kitchen. This space, filled with laughter and camaraderie, was my solace, and in a strange turn of events, I felt liberated in seeing those who had once wronged me face the consequences of their choices. While I flourished, surrounded by friendships forged in authenticity, the desolate remnants of my husband echoed through the late-night conversations. His fate became an artifact of amateur psychology. Provocations from guilt-fueled company made themselves known in bars where he drowned himself in whiskey-marinated regrets, soul-searching yet lost in a haze where morality still lingered omnipresent. 6 months later, and he's right back to where it all began, Clara remarked one evening, as we savored delicate pastries dressed in chocolate glaze. It became our tradition, the soft glow of the cafe casting shadows through our laughter, forming a cocoon around us where the world ceased to matter. Serving tables at some no-name restaurant, trying to balance debts while regretting past choices. And there it was, a confirmation of my transformation, no longer tied to what had been woven so carefully between the walls of betrayal. Respect blossomed where once there had been ruin. As the cafe enveloped me in warmth, the tantalizing blend of espresso and wistfulness filled the spaces around me. I understood my narrative had shifted irrevocably. Remnants of my past clung to the fringes, but no longer defined my existence. The scars of betrayal morphed into badges of resilience, guiding my journey onward. I laughed warmly, sharing jokes with patrons who returned day after day, forming bonds amid the rising steam of caffeinated bliss. They became the family I had longed for, a tapestry intertwined with community and support, and I cherished them dearly. Yet, in those quiet moments, an insatiable itch persisted, curiosity igniting my imagination further. What if there were more convoluted stories on the horizon? More chaos to weave into this beautifully rich fabric of reinvention and revenge that thrilled me so deeply? Next week, I hear there's a fascinating story about a local artist who faked her own kidnapping. Clara grinned, dangling the tantalizing thread before me. I mean, surely you cannot miss that, right? Embracing the heat from the oven, I sought the next adventure layered within the unforeseen paths of life. The sweetness of my cafe mingled with the dizzying possibilities of unfolding stories waiting just within reach. A heartbeat away from savory triumphs and the next tale of intrigue, this journey was far from finished. Having traversed the wilderness of betrayal and reclamation, I could only tease the taste of what was to come. Am I ready? Yes, I am. And as I prepared for the world ahead, the past swiftly intertwined with the future, I smiled, embracing the echoes of backward glances now merely shadows flickering in the vast space of possibility before me.